Hi, I'm Nate Savage, and welcome to Lesson 8 of the Blues Guitar Quick Start series. In this lesson, we're going to start learning how to actually choose the notes in the blues scale that you play instead of just kind of randomly playing through blues scale shapes. Up until this point, you've really been just focusing on getting the blues scale shape down and hopefully memorizing where the root notes are, right? Well, in this lesson, I'm going to teach you how to start choosing your notes to fit over the 1, 4, and 5 chords that occur within the 12-bar blues progression. We'll start off by learning where the root notes are for the 1, 4, and 5 chords, where they're contained in the blues scale. And then I'll teach you some specific licks that are meant to be played over the 1 chord, some specific licks that are meant to be played over the 4 and the 5 chord too. This may be a little bit more difficult than what you're used to playing, but the extra brain power that we're going to apply here is really going to pay off when you're playing in a big way. Let's start off by talking about how to emphasize the root of the 1 chord in the 12-bar blues. You've already been kind of doing this because you know where the root notes are, hopefully by now, for your E blues scale. And the 1 chord in an E blues is E, right? So if you emphasize those E notes in your blues licks and your solos, you're really going to lock the listener into the sound of that 1 chord, and you're going to sound like you know what's going on with the chords you're playing over. In order to help you understand what I mean by emphasizing root notes, I have 2 licks that are custom made to be played over the 1 chord, in this case, an E chord. This first lick starts off with your 3rd finger on the 3rd fret of the B string, and that's the flatted 7th note of the blues scale. What we're going to do is bend that note up a whole step to the root of the blues scale, which is an E. So going for a bend like this from the flat 7 up to the root is a really good way to kind of emphasize the root note of that scale, right? So that's your first note. After that, you're going to play the open E string, then the 3rd fret of the high E string, then you're going to have the open E string again. That's going to be short, and there's a rest in between there, and then 1 more open E that you're going to let ring out. So slowly, this thing in time will be like this. Now, do you see how I was kind of emphasizing or putting more importance on the root note by hitting a lot and bending that note up to the root note of the scale? Okay, the next lick that's customized to be played over a 1 chord. And this could be like more of a rhythm riff, or it could be part of a solo too. Basically, we're starting on the E root note right here, then playing the open D string, and then the 2nd fret of the A string. Then you're going to roll your finger over to the 2nd fret, that root note again, on the 2nd fret of the D string. And then you have a rest, and then you're going to hit the open E string twice. So that's another root note, right? And again, the rhythm for this one is this right here. 1, 2, 3, 4. So do you see how we've kind of either started and or emphasized the root notes of that 1 chord to help these licks fit over the 1 chord a little bit better? You can do the exact same thing when the 4 chord comes around in the 12-bar blues progression. Remember, measures 5 and 6 are the 4 chords. So basically all you have to do is emphasize the root notes of the 4 chord. The 4 chord is an A, so the root note of the 4 chord would be an A note. So your root note locations for the 4 chord in this blues scale are the open A string and the 2nd fret of the G string. Work on memorizing where those locations are. Here are a couple licks that are custom made to go over the 4 chord. Start off on the root note there on the 2nd fret of the G on that A note. Play that, then play it open, then play the 2nd fret of the D string, back to the open G, then back to that A note, and you're going to end with the open A string. So we're kind of really emphasizing that A note. All right, on to lick number 2 that fits over the 4 chord. Again, you're going to start here on the root note on that A, and you're going to play that twice with 2 swung 8th notes. Hop over to the open E string, then back to that root note on the 2nd fret of the G. Then you're going to go to the 3rd fret of the high E string, play that note, then play that same string open. Then you're going to play the open G string, and finally end on the root note, that A again, on the second fret of the G string. And I know that's a lot of kind of information to think about. If all you can do at first is remember where the root notes are for the 4 chord, an A there, and an A there, that's totally fine. That's the next step that you need to do. Now we need to learn where the root notes for the 5 chord are, so we can learn a couple of licks that are custom made for the 5 chord. So the 5 chord in the key of E blues is a B. So we have a B here on the second fret of the A string. And we have the open B string as well. So memorize where those 2 notes are, and the idea is to emphasize them when you're playing over the 5 chord a little bit. So let's go over a couple of licks that I've written out for you that help you emphasize the root note of the 5 chord. First note on this one, you're going to come to the second fret of the G string with your middle finger. You're going to bend that note up a whole step. Basically, it's an A. We're bending it up to a B. B is the root note of the 5 chord. So next 2 notes are the open B string, the root note, then the 3rd fret of the B string, then back to the root, the B, and then the 2nd fret of the G string. And then you're going to end on the root note again, the open B string. And the rhythm for this one is this right here. 1, 2, 3, 4. This next lick that's meant to be played over the 5 chord, or emphasizes the root note of the 5 chord, is basically a descending down just a regular minor pentatonic scale, the E minor pentatonic. So you have the highest note here on the 3rd fret of the open E string, then the open E, 3rd fret of the B string, open B string, our root note, right? Then the 2nd fret of the G string, open G string, and you're going to come end on that B root note. And the rhythm for this is a little bit different. The first 2 beats are triplets, so they're pretty quick. Da, 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 da. And that's the basic rhythm. So 1, 2, 3, 4. Now that you have the basic idea of what I mean by emphasizing the root notes of the chords over which you're playing for your leads, what you want to do is pull up the jam track and just try to put this into practice. If all you can do is hit the root notes of the chord as they're whizzing by, that's totally fine. That's really the next step into learning how to choose your notes in your solos instead of just flying through the scales, right? And, you know, don't get too bogged down in the theory of this. The blues is a lot about feeling emotion and guts and just letting come out of you what comes out, right? But if you have a better idea of what's going on in this, your brain can really help your heart have a better idea of what to play. So here's what it might sound like if you're just trying to hit the root notes of the chords in the standard 12-bar blues progression. So once you can do that and you know where these root notes are, try making up some solos emphasizing those root notes and using the licks that you learned in this lesson. It might sound something like this. I know this is a lot of information to digest, but the good news is if you can apply this to your playing, you're going to be leaps and bounds above a lot of guitar players, right? Choosing your notes instead of just playing through the blues scale at random. Of course, you always want to let your heart and your guts be your guide when it comes to the blues, but knowing what's going on behind the chords and the scales is great. In the next lesson, we're going to talk about how to kick your self-expression up a notch in your blues guitar playing by talking about phrasing, sliding, bending, and vibrato. If you have any questions for this lesson, leave them in the comments and I'll get back to you, or you can email me, nate@guitarsystem.com. See ya.